Nobody likes Milhouse. Mr. Largo said it, and for once, Mr. Largo is correct. Nobody likes Milhouse. He is one of the most disrespected characters on The Simpsons. In-universe, they don't treat Milhouse well, and out-of-universe, the writers don't care that much about him. Like, let's consider this. Can you think of a time where a character said something nice about Milhouse? Aside from Samantha Stanky, I mean one of our Simpsons regulars. Has anyone ever given Milhouse his flowers? Or how about this? Are there any Simpsons episodes told primarily from Milhouse's point of view? I think this is a legitimate question. Even miserable wretches like Krusty and Moe have served as our protagonists. They've received the warm and fuzzy, character-validating endings. To be honest, I don't really care about Milhouse. At least, not as much as many other characters. He's just kinda there. And it's weird, because he's definitely had his share of problems. He's sympathetic. Is it something about the way Milhouse stories are told? To figure this out, let's look at his three main storylines. His parents' divorce, his relationship with Lisa, and his friendship with Bart. Maybe these characters will provide the answer. And you know what? We're starting back at home. Okay, so here we are in promising territory for a good Milhouse story. KIRK and LUANN's divorce was a notable status quo shift. And, as we've seen with others, these continuity changes are amazing opportunities for the audience to discover what makes these characters tick. We see some of this happen in A Milhouse Divided, right after that fateful dinner party. Homer and Marge talk about the split, and Marge remarks, "You know who the real victim is in all of this? Milhouse." Then we cut to him sitting sadly on the bus, with even folks like Nelson and Kearney comforting him, and assuring him things will get better. Later, Milhouse acts out aggressively, and LUANN makes no attempt to reel him back in. It's clear that the divorce is taking a toll on him. Finally, the writers are giving Milhouse some depth. Then the episode turns into a Homer and Marge marriage crisis, closing with a second wedding. The end. After this point, we get very little of the Van Houten family dynamic. Mostly small peeks at KIRK as a divorced dad. They lean into KIRK's patheticness, with Milhouse providing frustrating updates about LUANN. In Season 15, we get Milhouse doesn't live here anymore. Once again, Milhouse is acting out, going on a rampage during a field trip. This is because he's moving to Capital City, as his mom got a new job there. This episode touches on the disruptive aspects of kids' lives after their parents' divorce, possibly having to move school districts and say goodbye to their friends. Finally, we'll see a tangible effect on Milhouse's personality. Then it turns into an episode about Bart becoming best friends with his sister. The end. It feels like the writers realized that they weren't doing anything meaningful with the storyline. Perhaps they were running out of divorced dad jokes. Because in Season 17's Milhouse of Sand and Fog, they walked it back. After reconnecting at a pox party, KIRK and LUANN attempt a trial unseparation. They tell him, unlike the breakup, this is not your fault. Milhouse is overjoyed by the news. We get an entire montage of how wonderful his life will be again, now that they're back together. However, as both of his parents deprioritize him, Milhouse yearns for the divorce days where they were competing for his love. We're finally getting a sense of how conflicted Milhouse feels about the whole situation. Then it turns into a Homer and Marge marriage crisis, culminating in a danger set piece in a river. The end. The Van Houten's divorce is a good example of how not all Spotlight episodes are created equal. There are two main types. There are the true Spotlights, where the secondary character is the full or partial protagonist, and we follow along with their perspective. And then there's the more reactive Spotlight, where it's about how the secondary character affects the Simpson family. It's like the difference between Sweet Seymour's Badass Song and Grade School Confidential for Principal Skinner. The first episode is fundamentally about Bart's feelings about getting Skinner fired. We follow Bart. While the second one follows Skinner and Edna's relationship, and Bart supports their story. Both of Milhouse's classic era spotlights fell into that reactive category. They were fundamentally Bart stories. And so, the Van Houten divorce episodes followed suit. They weren't about giving Milhouse depth, they were about enabling new story possibilities for Bart and Homer and Marge. Ironically, the first time Milhouse ever got a true spotlight was after the divorce, in season 19's Little Orphan Millie. This is the episode where Kirk and LUANN remarry, thereby slamming the door on this plotline. On their honeymoon, they go overboard and are lost at sea. Milhouse, living with the Simpson family, has to confront the reality of his parents' deaths. Instead of withdrawing, Milhouse decides that he has to be a man now. He becomes a moody loner, declaring to Nelson, "Go ahead, beat me up, then maybe I'll feel something." Milhouse is obviously extremely depressed, but seems to be leaning into this persona. And it's actually working for him. Later, we find out that Kirk and LUANN survived, and Bart and Milhouse eventually crash land into them. It's kind of weird how they had an entire divorce plotline built for the Van Houtens, but they don't do much with Milhouse until they're totally out of the picture. After that, we've gotten small glimpses of their family dynamic. We've seen LUANN and Milhouse out and about on occasion, but most of the substance revolves around his relationship with his dad. In season 24's Hardly Kirking, Milhouse pretends to be Kirk, creating mischief all around town. When they get caught, Milhouse tells him that it was fun living his life and would love to grow up to be just like him. Aww. Milhouse and Kirk aren't always this heartwarming though. In Dad Behavior, Milhouse becomes disillusioned with his dad and ends up bonding with Homer, who happens to be feuding with Bart. And Bart, in response, starts hanging out with Kirk. This is another instance where Milhouse is a pawn in a Simpson family conflict. But it does end with Kirk and Milhouse declaring they love each other. Milhouse says, "You're my favorite guy that Mom's brought home." Obviously, this show is called The Simpsons, so the Van Houten dynamic is always going to be on the back burner. They're called supporting characters for a reason. Their story is always going to reflect on The Simpsons in some way. It is really weird that the writers had Kirk and LUANN divorce and then didn't do much with it. Now, to be fair, Milhouse did get unlucky in this regard. The writers weren't able to use LUANN for a while because Maggie Roswell left the show, when management cheaped out on paying her. When she finally did return, several years had passed, and the writers just gave up on the storyline. I think Kirk and LUANN's divorce is the most squandered story opportunity in Simpsons history. That The Simpsons never did a serious examination of what being a child of divorce is like. Milhouse never got that episode about him. This is something that so many people in America have experienced, and it was the perfect opportunity to cover it. The stuff in A Milhouse Divided or Milhouse Doesn't Live Here Anymore isn't enough. This was a story hook that was unique to him, a brand new dimension that could have been explored. The Simpsons writers were extremely interested in tackling Nelson's domestic issues, whereas Milhouse's misery is played for laughs. They'll do shit like this. Like, what are you guys doing here? I mean, I like dark humor, but that's really bleak. So, this is less of a case of the Van Houtens don't like Milhouse, and more of a the writers don't like Milhouse. If they did, it wouldn't have taken them 19 seasons to get around to this episode. It's clear Milhouse is viewed as strictly a supporting character for the Simpson family. So, let's go there next. Oh man, this part is going to be painful. We all know that Milhouse has a crush on Lisa, and that Lisa doesn't feel the same way about him. This has been going on for like 25 seasons. Milhouse's patheticness in this regard is very well documented. On the other hand, as we've seen in flash forwards, Milhouse did eventually marry Lisa. So it can't be all bad for him, right? Right? Early on, they played Milhouse's crush for laughs, largely at his expense. Cue him crying in the car, Milhouse doesn't count, Lisa's trying to bring out the Milhouse in Nelson. They've been married in an anthology segment and in numerous fantasy sequences, and Lisa is repulsed by him in each. Also, I think she gets him killed in one of them. In season 10, we did get an instance of Lisa actively pursuing Milhouse, but it's clear that this is only out of desperation. In season 16's future drama, things are finally looking up. as the two of them are dating and going to senior prom together. Oh whoops, Lisa dumps him shortly afterward. This episode very pointedly positions Milhouse as Lisa's bad ending. If she doesn't go to Yale, she has to settle for Milhouse, which she obviously doesn't want. And he even acknowledges and encourages this reality, whining that BART is stopping her from ruining her life. Milhouse does not subscribe to the "I just want her to be happy" school of love. Interestingly though, after this point, the writers started teasing that maybe Lisa does like Milhouse a little, or that there is a version of Milhouse she might be into. In a season 17 B-plot, Milhouse tutors her in Italian, taking her on a romantic Vespa ride to Little Italy. Lisa likes this confident Italian Milhouse, even giving him a kiss. She quickly snaps out of it though, after she catches him with another girl. But the point is that for once, Lisa is portrayed as being interested in him. In that episode where KIRK and LUANN disappear, Lisa is totally drawn to the new loner Milhouse. She says he is so brave and holds his hand. Loner Milhouse is getting all the love. Even Nelson wants to save him. In another episode, Milhouse comes to the conclusion that chicks dig Brando, and completely transforms his personality. He stands his ground, refuses to give away his cupcake, and tells her to get him some milk. Lisa is impressed that Milhouse is showing some backbone, and sees him in a new light. Milhouse continues acting like an aloof asshole to her, and it continues working. Lisa's making cookies for this guy now. Okay, I get what they're saying about Milhouse's confidence and everything, but I don't buy this Lisa characterization, that she would take this much shit from him. Milhouse feels so guilty that he gives up his new persona, declaring, "I could be anyone for you, except someone who is mean to you." Lisa seems to be into these old-timey actor types, as she totally falls for this Humphrey Bogart kid in their production of Casablanca. Milhouse, the understudy, actually sabotages him to get him kicked out of the show, so he can be the lead opposite her. But Milhouse is a terrible actor and makes Lisa miserable. Marge tells Lisa to try to be supportive, but the whole thing doesn't matter anyway, because the Humphrey Bogart kid impersonates him and takes over the role anyway. Milhouse gets to drown his sorrows with Smithers. Even when Lisa and Milhouse get married in the future, it's clear that things are not going well. Look at these Christmas photos, for example. They're happy when dating. Lisa seems less than pleased in her wedding dress. Very much the image of Milhouse declaring victory. We don't even get to see any of their good times together, or understand why she fell for him. Instead, the writers immediately sideline him. Milhouse is the allergy-stricken husband who goes off to Michigan. Their daughter Zia has none of Milhouse's genetic material. And Lisa has been secretly calling Nelson and describing her marriage as dead and unfulfilled. I mean, I guess Milhouse quote-unquote got the girl, but did he really? Things somehow got worse in the terrible, terrible sequel episode. Their marriage has crumbled further, to the point that, when Milhouse becomes a zombie, this is an improvement. Lisa finds him so much more interesting now, and doesn't want him to be cured. She eventually does the right thing, but it doesn't matter anyway, because it was all a fantasy and Milhouse is stuck as a zombie. There is only one clear example of the writers showing any optimism about their relationship. In season 22's Homer Scissorhands, Milhouse makes a grand public declaration of his love. Lisa is mortified, telling him that she doesn't love Milhouse and never will. Another girl named Taffy is impressed by this romantic gesture, and the two begin dating. Lisa just doesn't understand why she likes him so much, so she spies on their dates. When she's discovered, Taffy declares that she and Milhouse can never be together because he will always love Lisa. Milhouse bitterly tells her, "You don't want me to be with you. You don't want me to be with someone else. How miserable do I have to be before you're happy?" Surprisingly, Lisa kisses him. She still has no idea if she likes him, but confesses he is cute in the moonlight. Everything's coming up Milhouse. Once again, this is pretty much the only time in Simpsons history where the writers want the audience to root for Milhouse. You could make an argument for the ending of the Casablanca episode, where Milhouse commiserates with Smithers, where Milhouse asks why they do stupid stuff for love, and Smithers says what keeps you going is the thrill of the chase. although you will likely never get it. The writers are throwing a sympathetic moment Milhouse's way. But this is less of a hopeful declaration and more of a statement about his tragic status quo, that it's Milhouse's lot in life to keep chasing. It should be pretty clear from all these examples that Lisa doesn't like Milhouse's true personality. She only seems to fall for him when he's pretending to be someone else. Italian Milhouse, Loner Milhouse, Brando Milhouse, even Zombie Milhouse. She only wants to date him out of her own sense of desperation or out of envy. I think this dancing scene sums up their dynamic pretty well. Lisa taunts Bart's crappy love life, saying that Milhouse isn't great, but at least she's with someone who tries too hard because he really likes her. Milhouse is just happy to be with her. He doesn't care about the negative implications. I don't really want to litigate who's worse here, Milhouse trying to constantly wear her down, or Lisa who treats him like a safety school. It's clear that Lisa isn't into Milhouse, and if they do somehow get together, she's gonna end up resenting him. The writers never show their good times, they always fast forward to them breaking up or being in a loveless marriage. It's difficult to argue that Milhouse will mature into someone she could love, because we've seen that scenario too. These are two people who need to go their separate ways. Lisa needs to let Milhouse go off and be happy, and he needs to figure out a way to move on. Maybe there's another Samantha out there. Milhouse is definitely sympathetic in that most everyone can relate to having an unrequited crush. Liking another person so much, and it just kills you that they don't feel the same way. There have been plenty of endearing characters in this situation where the audience roots for them. And there are the characters who become creepy nice guy archetypes, who feel entitled to returned affection. I wouldn't say Milhouse is that bad. He's played more as the pathetic puppy dog rather than someone who thinks he deserves Lisa. But the point is, rarely does Milhouse get any hope from the Simpsons writers. It's never tossed a bone to make us want to root for him. The Lisa-Milhouse relationship is a 25-year-long dead end for his character. Thankfully, Milhouse isn't completely alone. He will always have Bart as his best friend. You know, Bart, one of the most self-serving, manipulative, and destructive kids in Springfield. Already getting nervous about this next part. Bart is the most important character to Milhouse functionally. He kinda has to be, since he was created to specifically support Bart's stories. Well, and to sell Butterfingers. The writers basically abandoned Richard and Louis because Milhouse served the role of Bart's friend that well. They have written so many sequences of Bart and Milhouse having fun together, like going on a psychedelic squishy bender or camping out in the mall. Milhouse tends to be involved in Bart's big projects, like buying Radioactive Man #1, infiltrating Shelbyville, and going on a road trip. Oh, is Bart doing a new prank? Milhouse is right there next to him, the perfect partner in crime. I don't think anyone could argue that Bart hates Milhouse or is trying to get rid of him, considering the two of them hang out all the time. That being said, like most friends, Bart and Milhouse do fight. Milhouse is not always the most loyal or compassionate buddy. Like, remember after Bart yells at him at church how much Milhouse tortures Bart with his soul? Milhouse loved turning the tables on his friend. In season 13, when Bart breaks up with Greta, Milhouse has no shame about being Greta's rebound. She's with the house now. In season 25, after Bart eats a dead frog and becomes a pariah, Milhouse quickly abandons him. He doesn't return until the very end of the episode. In season 30, after a disagreement about an Itchy and Scratchy reboot, Milhouse dumps Bart, and his new group of friends chases after him. And, most damningly, in that episode where he moves to Capital City, Milhouse humiliates Bart when he visits. To be fair, he does get Bart's begrudging consent and whispers, "I'll always love you, Bart." But come on, Bart literally took a flight to Capital City just to get shit on by Milhouse. On the other hand, if anyone deserves to get back at Bart, it's Milhouse. They are best friends, but Bart does not treat Milhouse well. They take on leader and follower roles, with Bart regularly ordering him around, like that time they ran the Android's Dungeon together. Heck, this joke from season 8 pokes fun at their dynamic, that a Milhouse is looking for a BART to boss him around. The season 23 classic, Mo Goes From Rags to Riches, features a B-plot playing up this dynamic. BART makes fun of him one too many times. Milhouse gets fed up and declares their friendship over. BART fails repeatedly at apologizing, continuing to treat Milhouse like he doesn't matter. They do eventually make up after BART lets him, or Drederick Tatum, punch him. Milhouse says that he's glad it's over because he wasn't comfortable having the upper hand. BART says, "From now on, I'll dominate you in ways you don't realize." And Milhouse replies, "That's all I ever wanted." Wow, I can totally see why this episode is so notorious. It's that B-plot, right? Obviously, they're playing this up for laughs, but the point is that BART and Milhouse aren't treated as equals in this friendship. As a result, BART can be weirdly possessive and jealous of Milhouse when things are going too well for his bestie. We all remember how things went when Milhouse and Samantha Stanky got together. The moment BART saw an opening, he sabotaged them. In that season 19 episode with Loner Milhouse, BART absolutely hates how popular his new persona is. And much like before, BART sets to work to sabotage him. This time, he goes to find Milhouse's uncle in an attempt to make him less alone and therefore less sympathetic, but this backfires majorly. Lisa explains that he's afraid of losing Milhouse, and after she taunts him about loving Milhouse, BART declares, "I love him so much." It's interesting how Lisa literally goes on to marry Milhouse, but the only profession of love came from BART of all people. It's clear that BART does genuinely like Milhouse and views him as a friend. Otherwise, he wouldn't feel as guilty as he does when he's wronged him. There's a season 25 episode where BART witnesses Milhouse get beaten up during a race, and instead of helping him and taking a pounding, he runs on by. BART is continuously racked by guilt, and Milhouse is furious when he eventually regains his memory. In the end, BART does make things right by saving the day and setting up Milhouse to take all the glory. In season 20's The Good, the Sad, and the Drugly, Milhouse takes the fall for a prank, and for once, doesn't narc on BART. But instead of visiting him like he promised, BART runs off with this goody two-shoes girl. This time, Milhouse gets to come back and sabotage a budding relationship. I guess it's only fair. After being dumped, BART goes back to her to apologize for being terrible. But it turns out, he is actually apologizing to Milhouse. He says, "You've always been there for me, man. I'll never turn my back on you again." Earlier in the video, I said that, unlike other characters, Milhouse never seems to get that affirmation. The warm and fuzzy moment where someone describes what Milhouse means to them. Here, Milhouse quite literally got his flowers. This and this Lisa scene are the only episodes that end on happy Milhouse notes. And even the Lisa one, she's unsure about her exact feelings. BART and Lisa both treat Milhouse like they're above him, with BART ordering him around like a lackey, and Lisa always thinking of her bright future. However, the difference with BART is that Milhouse clearly means something to him. BART isn't surrounded by dozens of friends. When LUANN won't let them hang out anymore, BART isn't quickly rebounding to someone else. We've seen BART mourn his lost friendship several times. In a weird way, the prospect of losing Milhouse humbles BART. Similar to Marge, Milhouse is one of the few characters that can break through BART's facade, make him feel bad when he's screwed up. Let's face it, BART can be pretty terrible to Milhouse. This is a very exaggerated portrayal of how boys often razz each other. The BART and Milhouse friendship is not exactly perfect. But somehow, BART is the only character on the show who supports Milhouse. BART's stories explain why he matters. It's the only Milhouse relationship that the audience is meant to care about, and BART is the only person who appreciates Milhouse for who he is. Once again, he does it in his very snarky bastard way, but by BART standards, this is practically a wedding toast. Milhouse will take what he can get. If you watched my video about Nelson's dads, you might remember me declaring that this is a pro-Nelson channel. And in a weird way, I feel like that's tacitly saying I am anti-Milhouse. The reason being that Milhouse and Nelson occupy some of the same space on the show. They're both friends with Bart, they're both potential Lisa ships, and they both have troubled home lives. Why do I care more about Nelson as a character than Milhouse? I mean, Nelson sucks. He makes Bart and Milhouse's lives miserable. In a just world, we would all be rooting for Milhouse to get the last laugh. Is this just that we, the audience, are drawn to the bad boy with a troubled past? Are we all just trapped in a cliche romance novel? Milhouse is like the ultimate jobber on The Simpsons, to put it in wrestling terms. The writers gave him a bunch of episodes, even making him sympathetic, but they never put him over, you know? Milhouse never got that big win. He was never given the agency to resolve anything himself, nor prove anything to those around him. The Lisa Milhouse ship is never going to be popular because they never sold it to us, like Lisa Nelson. The best Milhouse could hope for, narratively, is to tag team with Bart, but always as the sidekick. Obviously, some of this was bad luck with the Maggie Roswell departure, but it's clear that the writers view Milhouse as the dud, and that's all he's allowed to be. His role is pretty depressing. At the same time, I wouldn't call Milhouse a depressing character to watch. He's not an Eeyore that you want to comfort, he is way too upbeat for that. The thing I like most about him is his resiliency and his sense of optimism. That Milhouse gets kicked around so regularly, but he always seems to pick himself up and keep plugging away. Call it naivete, call it desperation, call it stupidity, but he is good at finding that silver lining. One of my favorite little Milhouse moments happens in Homer's Enemy, after Bart leaves him alone for the night shift. Milhouse remarks, "So this is my life. At least I've done better than Dad." I mean, how can you hate Milhouse? He did a great job watching that factory fall over. Milhouse is incredibly popular within the Simpsons fandom. The writers didn't put Milhouse over with some cool storyline or special character study, but he became a fan favorite anyway. And I think Milhouse's upbeat attitude contributes a lot to it. It's not a coincidence that his catchphrase is, "Everything's coming up Milhouse." It perfectly sums up his personality. Milhouse never stops trying, and I do respect that about him. He's not afraid of taking an L, or even a dozen L's. He just has trouble recognizing when his efforts are wasted, or when it's time to move on. He's the kind of personality that would go on a crusade against a cartoon reboot or something stupid like that. Honestly, there's a part of me that wishes that when Milhouse grows up, that he just moves away from Springfield. Maybe Milhouse would do well in Shelbyville. I don't know. It's a big world, and someone out there's gonna appreciate Milhouse. He just needs to find them. So while Milhouse may be the dud, even the dud can be the hero of his story. Simpsons writers, this kid deserves another shot.